3, 2, 1.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network.
Mama, is Master gonna sell us tomorrow? Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I figured I'd start with that Negro spiritual from Bringing Down the House. This is The Real Pineapple. It's your humble host, Hunter, here. Hope you're having a great night, day, weekend, whenever you're checking this out. I'm going to get this over with quick. I've got a review for Emancipation, Will Smith's, quote, comeback, unquote, role. It is directed by the great Antoine Fuqua, who, of course, you know from directing one of the best films in the last 30 years from Training Day, was a producer on Southpaw, directed both Equalizer films, which, if you've listened to the podcast, you know I'm a huge fan of. Was also a producer on Bullet Train as well, and is an executive producer on Mayor of Kingstown, which is actually really good if you haven't watched that yet. So, alright, let's just jump in here. Alright, Will Smith is back in another film, which is, let's be clear, made to get Oscar buzz, made to get Oscar nominations. It won't, at least not in the big categories. And look, Will Smith, I talked about the slap, I more than even I wanted to. I just kind of want this shit to go away. But at the same time, this is something that he did, so we do need to talk about it. So I will simply say that there is a level of grossness to the fact that Will Smith plays King Richard, this, Richard Williams, this abusive, shitty black father. He's awarded for an Oscar, literally awarding bad behavior, considering he slapped Chris Rock and then got the Oscar. And so, he goes off into hiding, assuming Jada let him, and comes back and he's doing this. And what I'll say is, from a technical standpoint, this movie is very well done. Outside of that is where I have my biggest issues. So, gonna go through this real quick. So, January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln proclaimed enslaved people and rebel states to be free. In Louisiana alone, 350,000 enslaved people faced the choice to either remain in bondage and wait for the Union Army to liberate them, or to take freedom for themselves. And for me, that's where, you have a solid foundation, at least got a basis on. But Will Smith plays Peter, who is separated from his family, taken into slavery, and then it's all about him escaping his captors and going ahead and getting to Louisiana, where he ends up becoming a soldier and fighting against his oppressors' ideals and maybe even his actual oppressors. So, Will Smith. I think Will Smith gets a bad rep on this from this front. I think Will Smith is a really, not just a good actor, but I think has become a great actor. I will give him no credit for King Richard, because King Richard sucks ass. But what I will say is, when you look at him in even like Bad Boys 3, or Bad Boys for Life, pardon me, it should be, why not save that for the fourth film, but whatever. Even something like Gemini Man, which I know is not a great movie, but I think he's actually good in it. Even something like, why am I blanking? Even something like in Men in Black 3, which I know the Men in Black franchise was past its time at that point. But, you look at stuff like Hancock, you look at stuff like I Am Legend, you look at stuff like Hitch, you look at stuff like iRobot. Will Smith has been able to transcend genres, whether it's rom-coms, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's dramas. Will Smith's been able to do it all. And I find that incredibly impressive. And I do think that because of, him going slap happy, we do need to keep in perspective that he is a great actor. Whether we like it or not, he is a great actor. Here, he's doing that concussion, tell the truth. He's doing that accent. And I just found it so jarring. It's really jarring because he's doing it throughout the whole film. Now, credit to him, he keeps up the accent for most of the film, but it's just one of those things I went, this is a bad choice. I don't like this. Please stop. Will, his big, I guess I'd say, antagonist would be Ben Foster's Jim Fassel. And you, of course, know Ben Foster from several things. Most likely the thing you know him from is going to be Hell or High Water or 310 to Yuma. He's excellent in both of those, by the way. But Ben Foster's been in the game for a while. He's great in Hustle as well, which I didn't review, but it's well worth your time, as well as Rock and Roll Hostels. Ben Foster's been in a lot of shit. And what I will say is that Ben Foster, if you need someone to play a piece of shit, you get Ben Foster, because he's really great at playing a piece of shit. There's this one speech that he gives near where they've been chasing Peter and they stop to make camp for the night. And Ben Foster's Jim talks about this one time where basically he talks about how, we had a black slave and she lived in the house and, she cooked for me and raised me, and how embarrassed he was by her for this reason. And I'll leave it at that. I'll let the story speak for itself. But it's one of those things that when he tells you the story, I just went, wow, you're a fucking monster. And that's just the thing with these sort of movies, is that I've seen these movies. I've seen these movies done way better. If you want to see a great slave film, watch 12 Years a Slave. It's right fucking there. The score's better. The direction's better. The performances are better. That actually won Oscars. 12 Years a Slave is great. Watch Roots, the original version or the remake. The remake is actually really fucking great. But the more I watch this, the more it just kind of hammers home what I've been thinking for really pretty much since I started the podcast, is this: I'm so sick of black pain being that, the line, or being the floor in some cases for studios. I'm just over it. When I think about Apple TV producing something like Swan Song with Mahershala Ali, 2-time Oscar winner Mahershala Ali, by the way. When I think about something like Swan Song and how that was barely fucking advertised, and that's a great sci-fi movie with black people and people of color, because Awkwafina's great in that as well. When I think about something like Swan Song and how that was barely advertised, and then I think about, I was seeing advertising for Emancipation on channels I wasn't even on for Apple TV. I'm like, what the fuck am I seeing this advertisement? It really pisses me off, because it just speaks to what the priorities are. It's all about pushing black pain, not pushing black excellence, which is why when something like Wakanda Forever comes out and does super well, and people are like, oh, why do we need a black Iron Man? Why do we need a female Iron Man? Blah, blah, blah. Those fucking morons who say that shit. This is why, because we don't always need to see black people in fucking chains getting whipped. And I don't understand. I realize I said it like Stewie Griffin slightly there, shut up. But it's one of those things that really does piss me off, because what you're saying is that that's all we are. We can only play slaves. And it's like, nah, damn that. We can play fucking anything we fucking want. So, yeah. So, but here's kind of the cruel irony in everything I just said. Considering how the public education system is heading right now, looking at you, Texas and Florida, because you have terrible fucking governors who suck dick. But yeah, fuck you, DeSantis. Fuck you, Abbott. Movies like this might be the only way to actually remind people that slavery was a thing, which is what's so fucking sad about it. So movies like this might need to be a necessity moving forward, which, if that's the case, fine. But let me just say this. Not everything needs to be black people being slaves. We can get black people in, something like Nope. We should see more stuff like Nope. We should see more stuff like Wakanda Forever. We should see more stuff like Swan Song. Give me some black people in shit that is not just slave shit. I've talked about the film at multiple points on the podcast. The review is on the channel if you're curious, but this movie 9 Days that Winston Duke stars in and with Zazie Beetz and Benedict Wong is fucking excellent. And that's a movie that went so under the radar. But watch shit like that. Don't just watch the slave shit. I will say, I think there are some action beats that are done here really well, because watching Peter run through the swamp trying to escape the men who want to capture him, it's basically, it's essentially Slave Master Metal Gear Solid, which admittedly is pretty funny. The only thing missing was that in the red question mark. But pardon me, there is a scene where he is, of course, on the run, and he goes ahead and encounters an alligator. And I will say, you see that in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler. But I thought that scene was actually thrilling, and that scene was actually very well done and very well filmed. And I've mentioned Antoine Fuqua before, earlier in the review. The action stuff is really well handled. There is this giant ass battle near the end of the film that I went, wow, this is really well filmed. I can tell what's happening. The violence is crazy. And there is one scene in this movie that I will give Will Smith credit for from an acting perspective. There's a point where he goes ahead and meets the general, once he goes ahead and gets to Louisiana. And, they flat out basically go like, yeah, you're not ready for the field. And, he basically goes, they whipped me, they took my identity, they spat on me, they called me nigger, and, they never broke me. And it's one of those rare scenes in the film from Will Smith from an acting perspective that I went, oh, okay, you can do this. Like, I know this gear is there. I just don't think it's a gear that he really is super interested in tapping into too often. But in that moment, I really did go, damn, okay, that was very well done. It goes back to what I keep saying. I'll be honest, out of all the movies I've watched recently, this is probably the one I have the least amount of notes on as far as stuff, because there's just a point I went, I don't need to take notes on this. Like, there's really nothing about this that's standing out or is really making me even want to take aggressive notes. I will say, these little white kids talking about, saying nigger and being like, runner. There's a moment where this white girl sees Peter running and she just rings this gong like it's fucking dinner time. It's like, runner. I was like, I would have kicked that little white girl in the fucking face if I knew she had ratted me out. Like, what the fuck? But yeah, there's some great stuff here from a technical standpoint. Ben Foster's a piece of shit. Like I said, he plays that really well. Will Smith's, or Peter's family in this, including, his wife, who's, Dodine, is what I'm gonna go with, who's played by, Charmaine, Bingwa. His family gets so little shine and so little, development. They really are props. It really is Peter's story, but considering he's supposed to be fighting to get back to them, I'm sitting there going, could I get a little backstory on his family? Could I learn what they like, or if they like crackers, or not the ones that are enslaving them? But do they like crackers? What's their favorite color? We just don't get any information on his family. So there's really no emotional attachment or any reason for me to care outside of the fact, it's a black guy and I want him to escape slavery. But that's kind of how hollow the film is in general. The film is written by, I have the name here. It's written by Bill College. And I have to bring this up because this kind of hammers home another issue that I have with the whole slave film genre. If you're doing a slave film, and I rarely deal in absolutes, if you've listened to the podcast, that's the case. I just don't think white people should be writing slave films anymore, because this is the same motherfucker who wrote Exodus, Gods and Kings, and I'm not even going to get into all the issues that movie has, let alone the representation, the whitewashing. So, yeah, I don't really need white people writing slave shit. Now, oh god, what's her name? Catherine Bigelow directed Detroit, which is an excellent film. It's hard as fuck to watch, but it's an excellent film. So I'm not saying, obviously I've seen, white people handle stories with people of color with incredible grace and be able to knock it out of the park. This motherfucker, I don't think is one of those people at all. And this just hammers home my point. So because of the technical aspects of the movie, I'll give this a C minus, but I have to bring up what I kind of mentioned earlier, the fact that Will Smith does this terrible thing in front of millions of people, in front of all his peers, and the first thing he decides to come back and do is a slave film to potentially give him another Oscar. There's a level of hoarseness and just tone deafness to taking this role that I really think people are just not acknowledging. And I really wish people would actually have the guts to call him on this shit, because it's fucking gross that he took this role, and it's pretty shitty that Apple TV is pushing this film in particular when they weren't pushing something like Swan Song, which is a much better film and actually could have gotten some buzz and actually gotten some people interested. So yeah, C minus for this, and that's actually probably being too kind. But Emancipation from Jada, so pardon me, just Emancipation. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? You can let us know in the comments. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter at jhunterrealpineapple. You can follow me on Instagram as well at jhunterrealpineapple. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Definitely give us a rating. It definitely helps out the podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud, Apple, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneUp, and Samsung Podcasts, to name a few, at The Real Pineapple. You can follow me on TikTok at BlackShazam775. You can follow me on Letterboxd at BlackShazam. And don't forget to like both our pages on Facebook at The Real Pineapple and Real Pineapple Games. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll have reviews come up here soon for Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, The Fablemans, She Said, Empire of Light, just to name a few. We're going to have, finally, our best and worst of will be dropping on January 29th. Both reviews on the same day. I love doing that. I love doing that review, so I cannot wait to get that out to all y'all. But everyone, please stay safe out there. I hope your New Year's getting started off on the right foot. Take care of each other. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll talk to you soon.